Well, welcome to Sunny Approach, and it's another day in the kitchen. We're starting off making some very simple pastry. I have 2 cups of flour here that has been sifted already.
So did you sift it?
Of course. And 1 teaspoon of Himalayan pink sea salt.
Does it work if you don't sift the flour?
It does, it just doesn't come out as well. It's a lot easier to work with sifted flour, got more finer particles. This is 2 tablespoons of sugar because we're making a sweet pastry. But you could leave out the sugar and use this same recipe for a savory pastry. So we're just going to mix those dry ingredients together briefly. Here I have a full 1/3 cup of unsalted organic butter.
Yeah. It's like when you want to get your fingers in it and just take a bit.
Yes. I'm going to use the knife here just to get those a little floured up. And then I have 1/3 of a cup of lard.
Can you use Crisco if you want to instead of lard? I know we
I
prefer.
would not recommend it for this recipe.
Okay, so lard only.
Yeah.
You can find it on the grocery store. It's called manteca too. If you go to most grocery stores, it just comes in a green and white box.
And if you're lucky enough to have an organic store, bulk food store, or an Amish bulk food store, you can probably find lard there too. This is where we find ours many times. So now I'm using a pastry cutter, biscuit cutter sometimes, and we are going to make fine crumbs out of the fat being cut into the flour. Now this is the important part. People get intimidated sometimes making pastry because they can't figure out how fine to make it. They don't want to overwork the dough, but they don't realize that that comes later. So at this point, all you're trying to do is make these particles as fine crumbed as possible, get that fat well mixed in. Could use a food processor if you prefer that. I don't like the noise, especially if we're trying to make a video.
Could you use a mixer?
No, you're going to have something with a blade that cuts the fat without melting the fat. And that's why I prefer doing it by hand with the biscuit cutter or a pastry blender, because it doesn't heat up. It's also why I'm using a ceramic bowl.
So cold is a good thing.
Cold is a good thing. Cold's really important for the next step after we get this done, and that's the water part. You want ice cold water. In this case, we're going to use about 1/3 cup to start with, which will hopefully be enough.
So ice water out of the faucet in the middle of wintertime is not cold enough?
No. I put ice cubes in.
We see it over there and behind your...
Okay.
Yeah, that's very obvious. Lots of ice cubes. More ice than water, looks like.
Yeah.
It's getting there. I'd give up right now. I'd be like, okay, it's good. Part
of the pleasure of baking is something you don't have to rush every day.
Yeah, but some of us prefer to get it done and over with. It's like getting to someplace in the car. Just get there, get your stuff, get done.
If you watched any of our videos in the past, you know one thing about us and cooking. There's only one of us who actually does the cooking side of the house, and the other one is holding video camera.
Yes, there's one who burns everything and one who does not. And if I don't burn it, I undercook it.
All right, that seems to be about right. So make a well in the center. Set that aside.
Oh, it's the same.
And we want about 1/3 cup of water, and this is just kind of a bit of an estimate here, a little over 2.5 ounces or thereabouts. There's no exact science when you're making this because you're doing it until it feels right, and that's the piece where people get intimidated with pastry dough because they don't know when it feels right. So big trick is don't pour all the water in at once. You want to sprinkle it around, and you're doing it just enough to get the dough to bind and stick together. It's another one of those things where patience comes into play.
Wish this is biscuit dough. It'd be really good to have some.
Maybe we'll make biscuits another day. So, how do you know if it's going to stick together? Well, you don't until you try. So I'm going to grab my hands and see if it will hold together. And it seems like it's going to be pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to pick up the bowl and move over to cutting board, which I'm going to lightly flour. Don't want too much flour or it will just dry out the dough. Put the dough onto here. What we're looking to do is to get this into a rough ball that will hold together. And if you feel like it's not holding together, then you can add a little bit of extra water to it. But the heat of your hands is starting to melt
The lard and
the
butter,
fat.
which is why you can't have Crisco, because Crisco doesn't melt easily as easily as with heat as the natural ingredients.
You can see this is holding together pretty good. And I do want a dough that's somewhat flaky. So, making a rough ball. And then we're going to refrigerate this for about half an hour before we try to make anything with it. Does it pass the taste test?
It's pretty soft. It kind of tastes like biscuit, not quite as sharp.
Okay. And there you have it, folks. If you enjoyed these videos, I invite you to become a subscriber to our channel, Sunny Approach. And as always, we wish you a sunny day.